Hello, friends, and welcome to the show. So, if last week you thought we had a crisis at the border, then this week must be Chernobyl or something exponentially worse than a crisis because what's happening this week makes last week look like a walk in the park. That's right. So, it turns out that the most transparent administration ever, Joe Biden, the transparent, the administration of the people, had been lying to us the entire time about how many unaccompanied minors are being held in U.S. custody. It turns out to be over 13,000, not the 3,700 that they had originally claimed. They're holding them for an average of 120 hours, far longer than the 72 hours allowed by law. This is getting bananas. Let's see CBS's reporting on this because I decided to go with a center left source on this.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. We're going to begin with a humanitarian crisis on the southern border that is growing larger and more dire by the day. Tonight, we have got the stunning new numbers. Sources tell CBS News more than 13,000 migrant children who entered the country without their parents are now in U.S. custody. The government says even more adults are being turned back every day. The Secretary of Homeland Security admitting today that so many people are now crossing the border, his department is on pace to stop more migrants than in the past 20 years. And with so many children, including toddlers, now flooding into the country, CBS News has learned the Biden administration is running out of space to house them and people to process their.
So I'm going to stop that real quick. So you know how she said that they're on pace to break the record for the past 20 years? So DHS has only been around for 20 years. So it's more honest to say we're facing more illegal immigration than ever before. Because just saying, oh, we're only dating it back to 20 years, well, that's only as long as DHS has been keeping records of this. So perhaps we should look a little farther back because there's probably other organizations who are keeping track of what was happening. It's so bad that the Biden administration is blacking out information. That way, media organizations can't find out the truth. We're going to cover that here in a couple minutes. Let's keep going.
Claims. Now, President Biden said today he has no plans to visit the border right now. And DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas says while the situation is difficult, his department is tackling it. But critics of Mr. Biden, including Republicans in Congress, are blaming the president tonight for rolling back the strict border policies of the Trump administration.
So that was CBS's take, right? So center left. We're going to go hardcore progressive left here in a second. And I think it's appalling that Joe Biden refuses to go to the border. He refuses to see the conditions that he's keeping these kids in because who built the cages? It was Joe and Barack Obama, right? And not only that, but Joe is keeping far more children in these cages than Trump or Obama ever had, right? So many kids in cages, they can only take a shower once a week. There's no mattress for them to sleep on. They can so shower once a day. They can talk to a family maybe once a week, or excuse me, they could shower once a week, talk to their family maybe once a week. In the week that they're there, they can't even see the sun. There's no place for them to sleep. They have to rotate just to sleep on the floor. It's disgusting. It's worse than prison. These are children. They're not prisoners. And sometimes it is more humane to send them back than to keep them in those conditions. And I know that is a hot take, and I know that's going to ruffle some feathers. But if you're going to keep them in those conditions, that is less humane than sending them back with their family to stay in Mexico until you can process their application. It is what it is. And I'm going to cover why that is here in a minute. But let's watch this video from Joy Reid and Julian Castro, who is my state something representative or state senator. I don't know. He does something, but he doesn't do a very good job. He and his brother tend to trade places. That was the thing when one of the two of them were mayor at some point. They would switch places, and it was found out. It was quite the scandal at the time. Let's find out.
Left our immigration system in tatters through policies like Remain in Mexico, through metering, through Title 42, which basically allowed him to expel thousands of people to deny them entry, including over 13,000 children. So he created a pent-up demand, this bubble of people who want to come in and claim asylum.
So Trump created demand by basically enforcing the law. That's what Julian Castro, that's his premise. So Donald Trump had created demand because he followed the law and didn't allow people to break the law and enter the country illegally.
And that's part of what we're seeing. It's true that we've had people presenting themselves in waves before. We saw that under President Obama. We saw it in 2019 under Donald Trump. But Trump weakened our ability to handle these situations. And so basically,
So, how did he weaken the ability to handle those situations? He gives no evidence for that because there is no evidence for that.
Joe Biden is left to pick up the pieces of a human rights catastrophe that Donald Trump left at our doorstep. Now, the difference between the Trump administration and the Biden administration when it comes to immigration is that with Joe Biden, you have someone who is competent. You have an administration.
You have somebody who's competent, somebody who can't remember the name of his Secretary of Defense, somebody who can't remember where his Secretary of Defense works, somebody who can't remember where he's at in the morning. He has to ask his wife where he's at. He has to go, Jill, where am I at? Oh, I'm in the White House. Okay, it's all good. No, he's not competent. He's a senile old man caging brown people because that's all he's done with his life. He created the school to prison pipeline in the 90s, and now he's caging brown kids at the border. All Joe Biden has done is thrown black and brown kids in cages. What else is new? So I guess, yes, that's true. Joe Biden is extremely competent at caging brown kids. You're right, Julian Castro. We have the perfect person for the job and the perfect Democrat for the job to cage black and brown kids. Joe Biden is our man. Thank you, Mr. Castro.
That is actually taking the steps necessary to solve this challenge. You heard Secretary Mayorkas, but
actually, he's not taking the steps, and I'll prove it here in a second.
Among other things, they've increased the interagency cooperation. They have cut through a lot of the red tape to actually get these children who are unaccompanied into acceptable housing facilities and then more quickly get them to host families.
So why are there so many unaccompanied children there, Mr. Castro? Remember a couple weeks ago when I said that people are going, like, if I was immigrating to the US illegally with my daughter, right? And I knew Joe Biden had this policy that unaccompanied minors would not be turned away, but parents and their child would be turned away. So guess what I would do? I would make that journey with my daughter, and about a mile away from that border, I would say, walk in that direction. My daughter's 5 years old. She can follow instructions as well as a 5-year-old could, right? I'd say, walk in that direction. Tell that person I died in the desert. I will come and find you. But walk in that direction and tell them you want to live in America. This is important because this is actually happening. Julian Castro is being extremely disingenuous here. And this is happening because of Joe Biden's policy. Let's keep going.
So that they're with their sponsor host families in the country instead of in one of these facilities. They also have done the compassionate thing, which is not to say no, not to reject an 8-year-old child or a 10-year-old child when they present themselves at the border unaccompanied. I think that reflects our values as Americans. I don't consider this a crisis. I agree that it is a challenge.
Oh, yeah, it's not a crisis that you have 13,000 kids in a facility that's at 700% capacity where they don't get to see the sunlight. They're starving. They don't have a bed to sleep on. Yeah, dude, go screw yourself. You know what? Why don't you send your kid to that summer camp? You butthole.
Challenge. It is something that can be effectively managed and that the administration is effectively managing.
So he says Biden is effectively managing this crisis. Let's jump over to Anda Giartelli. Sources confirm NBC story. A Biden admin decision not to immediately expel non-Mexican unaccompanied children has created a loophole for families who have been turned away to instead try again by sending kids alone, knowing UACs will be released into US. I told you. I've been telling you for over a week. It's almost like I've been telling these people what to do, but I wasn't. I swear. I promise, guys. I promise. I didn't tell them the loophole. I didn't tell them the secret. I didn't tell them the password on it. I didn't tell them corn pop or whatever Joe Biden's password is. I didn't tell them what it was, but I knew what was going to happen because I can see more than 2 inches in front of my nose because apparently These people are too stupid to figure it out. So from the Washington Examiner, families sending children alone across border in response to Biden's policies. Families are sending children alone across the southern border in response to Biden administration policies, according to a person familiar with the situation, putting them at risk and adding to the danger of the situation. The families are exploiting Biden administration rules against immediately returning unaccompanied children from countries other than Mexico, said the individual with knowledge of discussions at the Department of Homeland Security. The policy has created a loophole for families who have not been turned, who have been turned away after they have who have been turned away after they illegally came over the border and were pushed back into Mexico by Border Patrol. Immigration lawyers told NBC News that the strategy presents the best chance the children will be able to stay in the United States after being released to a sponsor in the country, even if it means the parent cannot go with them. So, like I said, the parents don't care necessarily about themselves. If they're good parents, they're going to care about their kids. Of the more than 18,000 family units who illegally came across the border last month, 8,000 returned south of the border. Federal data from February shows, providing thousands of parents the opportunity to decide to send their child back over the border unaccompanied. Single adults are still being immediately turned away after coming into the U.S. illegally. None are being held in custody or released into the U.S. That's not true, I believe. I believe they said there's people testing positive for COVID and being released into the U.S. interior who are adults. I'm assuming kids aren't being released into the U.S. interior by themselves. So I think there's a disconnect on that. Families and children who are taken into custody and are not held for more than 72 hours before being transferred to other agencies that have accommodations to safely hold people for longer periods. Normally, most people would be transferred to U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. But because ICE is underfunded and courts have blocked some facilities from detaining more than a certain number of people, and an unspecified number have been released across the country. Okay. Guys, I've been telling you this for weeks. This is exactly what was going to happen. You create these sort of loopholes. These people coming to the country are not stupid, right? There's a big difference between being book smart and being street smart. These people are street smart. Sure, they may not be book smart. They may not have a lot of wealth, but these people know how to survive. They know how to game the system. They know, okay, what is the letter of the law and what is the spirit of the law? I'm going to follow the rules to the letter of the law. And you're going to say, well, technically I can do it. And if you don't like it, you can shove it up your butt because guess what? The letter of the law allows it. And that's exactly what they're doing. Because guess what? They are being good parents. They're doing everything they can to better the lives of their child. It's probably something I would do. I'm not going to lie. However, this is Joe Biden's doing. He allowed this loophole to happen. And now people are exploiting the loophole. It's Joe Biden's fault. So apparently he's not that competent. Or the person making the decision isn't competent. But I guess I'd rather blame the person making the decision because I don't like to make fun of those with dementia. Let's jump to John Daniel Davidson. Imagine the reaction if Trump had imposed a media blackout at the border. Biden's doing that right now. Let's see if anyone in the corporate press cares. From NBC News. Washington, the Biden administration is restricting the information Border Patrol agents and sector chiefs can share with the media as a surge of migrants tests the agency's capacity at the southern border, according to current and to former Customs and Border Patrol protection officials. The officials say the restrictions are seen as an unofficial gag order and are often referred to that way among colleagues. The officials requested I can't say that. To be anonymous because they are not authorized to speak to the media about the topic. Border Patrol officials have been told to deny all media requests for the ride-alongs with agents along the southern land border. Local press officers are instructed to send all information queries, even from local media, to the press office in Washington for approval. And those responsible for cultivating data about the number of migrants in custody have been reminded not to share that information with anyone to prevent leaks, the official said. Multiple news organizations, including NBC News, have requested access to or photos from inside overcrowded border processing facilities holding unaccompanied migrant children. They have been denied. The DHS Press office released one photo late Tuesday of a mother and child undergoing a health screening inside a border facility, but no wider shots to show conditions or sleeping arrangements. At the height of the Trump administration's child separation policy in June 2018, it allowed media to tour facilities where separated children were held. The new restrictions have been passed down verbally, not through an official memo. The officials said the unofficial policy has led some agents at the border to release videos that show mass arrests and surges of migrants without permission from Washington, two officials said. Customs and Border Patrol, or Border Protection, and the Department of Homeland Security have not offered any media tours of the newly opened processing facility in Donna, Texas, which is reported to be over capacity with unaccompanied migrant children, a DHS official said. Some of the restrictions, particularly for in-person tours, are due to COVID-19 precautions, and not a single one since January 20th, the day President Joe Biden was inaugurated. A DHS spokesperson said the agency is following standards set in 2014. Oh, conveniently when Obama and Biden created the cages, folks. And you remember those kids in cages that the media used to basically bash Trump over the head? Were those kids in cages that Obama and Biden threw in cages? So those were never Trump's kids in cages. Those were Biden Obama's kids in cages. Across the federal government, certain employees are designated spokespeople for their respective agencies, and public statements are vetted to ensure accuracy. This standard and process has been followed at DHS since the department's inception and across bipartisan administrations. Customs and Border Protection continues to publicly provide the same monthly data on the same schedule as it has since 2014, the spokesperson said. The Trump administration's media strategy for DHS often focused on highlighting the dangers posed by migrants. So they kind of do a little editorial shift at the end to take a stab at Donald Trump. And that's not really necessary for this, because guess what? It's Biden blocking out the media. Trump didn't do it. Trump said, come on in, guys. The water's warm. Take your pictures. And what did the media do? They used the wrong pictures. That's how full of crap these media people are. Next. DJ Judd. Pressed on the surge of migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border, Biden asked if he should discourage the surge, tells ABC News' George Stephanopoulos. I believe I said that right. Yes, I can say quite clearly, don't come. And while we're in a process of getting set up, don't leave your town or city or community. Let's actually read the transcript. George. A lot of migrants coming in say they're coming in because you promised to make things better. It seems to be getting worse by the day. Was it a mistake not to anticipate this surge? Biden. Well, first of all, there was a surge the last 2 years. In 2019 and 2020, there was a surge as well. George. This one might be worse. Biden. No, well, it could be. Here's the deal. We're sending back people too. First of all, the idea that Joe Biden said come because I heard the other day that they're coming because, I'm a nice guy and I won't. George, they're saying this, Biden. Yeah, well, here's the deal. They're not. That's a lie. Fact check, false. And I'll prove it, actually. Fact check. I have an article that says otherwise, guys. George, do you have to say quite clearly, don't come? Biden, yes, I can say quite clearly, don't come. And while we're in a process of getting set up, don't leave your town or city or community. So where's my proof? Where's my proof that, well, they're not saying that. They're not saying that that they're coming because you're a nice guy. Well, the Daily Beast says it. Families trapped at the border say Biden has betrayed them. Central American families fleeing death and destruction at home believe Trump-era restrictions would be eased by Biden. They were wrong. Who would have thought that the segregationist in chief would lie to a bunch of brown people? From Juarez, Mexico. Juanita thought that by now she and her two daughters, 12 and 4, would be somewhere in Texas. It didn't really matter where, but a place safe and far away from the men who killed her husband and threatened her children. Instead, by the time you read this, she and her daughters are on their way back towards the killings and threats. Hundreds of families, mostly from Central America, are arriving at the border expecting to be welcomed into Joe Biden's America, only to be shocked by what they see as a betrayal and sent back to where they came from, according to migrants and shelter managers interviewed by the Daily Beast. Around 100,000 people were either apprehended by Border Patrol or turned themselves into officials along the U.S.-Mexico border in February alone, according to the latest figures from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security. DHS statistics show that more than 9,000 unaccompanied minors and almost 20,000 family units were taken into custody along the border last month, El Paso and Rio Grande Valley remained the busiest crossing points. During the campaign, candidate Biden promised to sweep away some of the President Donald Trump's harshest border policies and implement a humane approach. The reality of Biden's immigration policy is slowly becoming clear and not what thousands of vulnerable migrants expected nor needed. In an interview with ABC News on Tuesday, Biden finally said out loud in a message designed to discourage those who are desperate to escape their countries, "Don't come over." Juanita spoke to the Daily Beast while she packed up two small backpacks to start her journey back to Guatemala. "We thought this president was going to be different to us, but it is more of the same," she said. "I feel he lied to us." Like, this is bananas on so many levels. Either Joe Biden doesn't live in the real world, but he has dementia, so he probably only knows what he was told 5 minutes before he went onto stage, before he went out in front of camera, right? Or he's just being lied to, or somebody else is pulling the strings. Something's going on. There's definitely a disconnect. People keep saying, "Oh, there's a deepfake Biden." I don't believe there's a deepfake Biden. I believe that Joe Biden's an evil person because I think it is far more evil to what do they say about evil people or evil men will allow women to fall in love with them and not catch them, right? That's kind of what Joe Biden did. That's what Joe Biden did to all these people. He did that with Black Lives Matter, and then he won't return their phone calls. He did that with the immigrants at the border. Now he's just locking them up in cages. He's ripping the kids from the arms of families and throwing them in cages. Or he's sending them back to where they came from, where their families are being murdered, or doing countless numbers of things, right? But he's not doing what he said he was going to do. No $15 minimum wage. He's killing the economy. He's killing union jobs. UAW has just announced that I think the Ford plant, right? I think it was Ford. The United Auto Workers Union announced that Ford production was going to be moved from the United States back into Mexico due to Joe Biden's policies. Well, that's happening. So a lot of these promises that Joe Biden made, he just lied. He made people fall in love with him. And as they fall, he just refuses to catch them. And then he cashes the check. Wherever Moneybags Hunter Biden goes, he's still kicking back 10% to the big guy. So I'm still trying to find out where Hunter's at. The search continues. It's kind of like the 2021 version of Where's Waldo. It's going to be Where's Hunter. But I'm excited about that, guys. So my tweet from today or yesterday. For people attempting to defend Press Secretary, if this rate of illegal immigration keeps up, the U.S. will be forced to take in nearly 250,000 children. It's a fair question. We can't have a welfare state and open borders. Let's see why I wrote that.
Is there a limit or a cap to the number of unaccompanied minors that are going to be allowed into the U.S.?
A limit or a cap? Should we send some kids who are 10 back at a certain point? Is that what you're asking me?
She is not a nice person. That is not how you reply to that. That is not, when I stand at this podium, I speak with you with respect. That is not a respectful response. That is very insulting. That is very condescending. She should kind of be ashamed with that response because guess what? Like I said, if this pace keeps up, you're basically a nearly the size of a major city. You're importing that many kids. So I'm old enough to remember being told that, oh my goodness, we have a foster home crisis in the United States. We have so many crises within the United States. And you want to bring in 250,000 illegal immigrants who don't speak English, who are varying in age from probably 1 to 17, and you're going to be cracking jokes up at that podium? No, it is serious. Apparently, the Joe Biden administration, instead of handling this like adults, instead of handling this like a crisis, they are cracking jokes from the White House press secretary. Brown kids in cages? It's just a joke, guys. She's going to laugh as they're sitting in cages in the dark for 5 days at a time. No shower. just cracking jokes. Oh, what are we supposed to do? Send them back to Mexico? We'll just let them be all smelly, starving, no blanket, no bed, no whatever. You know, Joe Biden built the cages. He built the school to prison pipeline. He knows exactly how to cage people of color. Whatever. We got this down. We're Democrats. We cage minorities up all the time. That's what we do. We have these jails. It's our DAs, it's our mayors, it's our governors, it's our blue states that have so many incarcerated people. It's because of us. We know how to cage these kids. It's all we know how to do. And she's cracking jokes about it. Screw her.
I'm not setting the policy here. I'm just asking you what the Biden administration's policy is. Is there a limit to the number of children that will be allowed in? I mean, the numbers we're hearing now, 565 on average every day. I'm just curious what the end game is here. How many ultimately would be allowed in?
Well, I think where we are is we're focused on some of the very specific numbers.
So that was an important question, right? And it was important for her to note out. She's like, hey, it's not my job to tell you how many. That's your job. You set the policy and you tell us what your policy is, and we tell our readers, because we're journalists, we're journalists, you're the politicians. You tell us what you plan on doing, and we'll tell our people, and they'll give the thumbs up or thumbs down, right? And you'll adjust your policy from there on out. But if you're cracking jokes of kids being thrown in cages and people like Juanita being sent back to Guatemala, well, then obviously you're not taking it seriously. Obviously, you're just evil people laughing at suffering that's going on at the border. As people cry, Joe Biden and Jen Psaki are laughing. They're drinking the sweet nectar, the sweet milk of your tears, because it gives them strength. So that's going to be it for now, friends. I'm going to be dropping another video in a few hours. See you then. Have a good one.